So, imagine you are sitting in a doctor's office. You're on that crinkly paper. You've just had a chest scan because of a persistent cough, and you're understandably really nervous.
Right, waiting for the results is always the worst part.
Exactly. So the doctor comes in, pulls up your file on this beautifully designed lightning fast tablet. Within like a fraction of a second, an advanced AI analyzes the scan, cross-references millions of data points, and confidently flashes a green check mark.
Meaning you're healthy.
Right. You're fine. The interface is gorgeous, it's completely seamless, and it saves the doctor hours of tedious paperwork, which allows them to, smile, shake your hands, and send you home.
Sounds like the perfect healthcare experience, honestly.
It does. But underneath that perfect frictionless design, the machine just missed a fatal tumor.
Oh, wow. And because the system was so perfectly smooth, so seamless,
The doctor didn't feel the need to second guess it.
right, the software just felt too reliable to challenge.
And that terrifying scenario is really at the heart of our deep dive today. We are pulling from this incredibly thought-provoking article by Usman Diallo. It's titled The Invisibility Paradox, Balancing Seamless Systems and Clinical Judgment.
Yeah, it recaps a really fascinating panel from the GTEx Future Health Morocco 2026 conference.
Which brings us to our mission for today. We're going to explore this invisibility paradox. Because, as a curious learner, you probably use a dozen apps and tools every day, and you want them to be smooth. We all want our tech to be practically invisible.
We crave that frictionless experience.
We do. But this source material argues that making a system too seamless might actually be like the most dangerous thing we can do, especially when the stakes are life and death. So, okay, let's unpack this.
To understand why this paradox even exists, we kind of first have to look at the reigning philosophy of the whole tech industry.
Right.
For decades, the ultimate goal of design has been to make tools invisible. You want the technology to completely fade into the background so the user can just, focus on the task at hand.
Like it's not even there.
Exactly. But what Diallo points out, and what the panelists at GITEX unpacked so brilliantly, is that we are rapidly entering an era where that very invisibility threatens our ability to make critical, independent decisions.
And to fully grasp why that's a danger, we have to understand why we were so desperate for these invisible systems in the first place.
Absolutely. The context is crucial.
The article introduces us to Amin Moussaoui. He's the architect behind Morocco's blood transfusion information systems. And during the conference, he dropped this quote that essentially defines the dream of modern healthcare IT.
It's a great quote.
He said, "The day clinicians stop talking about the information system is the day we have succeeded."
And, it is the absolute gold standard for someone in his position. You have to consider the specific domain Moussaoui is operating in. When you're managing a national blood supply, the margin for error isn't just small.
Right.
It is literally zero.
Because blood isn't just a medication you can manufacture and leave on a shelf. It's living tissue.
Precisely. Let's look at the mechanics of what a blood transfusion system actually has to track. It's not just a matter of matching type A to type A. It's about managing the cold chain.
The cold chain.
Yeah. From the moment blood leaves a donor's arm to the moment it enters a recipient, it must be kept at highly specific, continuous temperatures.
Wow. Okay.
If a transit cooler fails and the temperature spikes by even a few degrees for a short window, that blood becomes compromised. Like, it can actually become toxic.
That's terrifying.
It is. So the software has to monitor thousands of bags of blood across hundreds of miles, track their strict shelf lives, process the complex biochemistry of cross-matching to prevent fatal immune reactions.
And handle the logistics of emergency transport. I can't even imagine the mental bandwidth it takes to track all of that manually.
You can't track it manually, or at least human brains really shouldn't have to.
Right.
And that brings up the other half of the equation, the people actually using the system. The cognitive load on modern healthcare workers is just crushing.
The article had some crazy stats on that, didn't it?
Yeah, Diallo references a 2016 study from the Annals of Internal Medicine that really puts numbers to this crisis. The study found that for every single hour physicians spent face-to-face with patients, they were spending nearly 2 additional hours on electronic health records and desk work.
2 hours of screen time for every 1 hour of actual patient care. That's absurd.
Yes. Think about how the brain works. The prefrontal cortex, which handles our complex decision-making and clinical judgment, has a finite amount of energy every day.
Right. It runs out of juice.
Exactly. When a doctor spends 2 hours fighting with uncooperative drop-down menus entering redundant billing codes and, dismissing useless pop-up warnings, they're suffering from severe decision fatigue.
So by the time they actually look at the patient, their cognitive reserves are just depleted.
Exactly. So Musawi's goal of an invisible system isn't about making the software look pretty. It's about designing the technology, the business processes, and the user workflow so seamlessly that it doesn't drain the doctor's mental energy.
The source material uses this fantastic analogy of a concert pianist to explain this state of flow, which I loved.
Oh yeah, that's a perfect comparison.
When a master pianist is playing a complex concerto, they aren't actively thinking about the mechanics of the piano. They're not thinking about the tiny felt hammers striking the steel strings or the tension of the pedals.
They're just entirely in the music.
Right. The instrument just becomes a transparent extension of their intent. They just play.
It's a beautiful concept. The tool becomes an extension of the human mind.
But wait, if the pianist shouldn't have to think about the hammers, and the doctor shouldn't have to think about the cold chain software, why is invisibility suddenly a bad thing? If the system is doing the heavy lifting and getting out of my way, isn't that exactly what I want?
Well, it is what you want for a piano. But a piano only does exactly what you physically make it do.
True. The keys don't play themselves.
Right. The shift we're experiencing right now is that modern AI systems aren't just passive tools. They are proactive agents. They are making decisions for you.
Okay, I see where this is going.
And when you take a complex, decision-making AI and hide it behind a perfectly seamless, invisible interface, you create a profound illusion of control. Diallo calls this frictionless intelligence.
And this is where the source material makes a wild but incredibly illuminating pivot.
Yeah, it really takes a turn.
To explain the danger of this illusion, Diallo pulls an example not from a hospital, but from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He looks at the dynamic between Tony Stark Iron Man and his AI assistant, Jarvis.
What's fascinating here is that Tony Stark and Jarvis really represent our ultimate pop culture ideal of human-AI collaboration.
Totally. It looks seamless, loyal, and lightning fast.
But Diallo argues that this fictional dynamic is actually a blueprint for real-world catastrophe. He uses it to outline something he calls the placebo interface theory.
Hold on. Placebo interface. Are you saying that when we watch those movies and we see Tony Stark inside the helmet with that massive glowing heads-up display?
Yeah, all the targeting graphics and stuff.
Yep. Right, all the reticles and flight metrics, that's a placebo. Is he basically like a toddler holding an unplugged video game controller?
That is a very harsh way to phrase it, but mechanically, yes.
Wow.
Look at the cognitive load of what the Iron Man suit is doing. It's managing complex supersonic flight dynamics, processing thermal and radar sensor data from 360 degrees, identifying and targeting multiple moving threats.
And deploying microscopic countermeasures all at once.
Exactly. The human brain's attentional capacity simply cannot do those mathematical calculations in a microsecond.
So Stark isn't actually flying the suit or pulling the trigger.
Not at the micro level, no. Tony Stark provides the high-level strategic intent. He essentially points at a flying alien and says, "That's the bad guy."
And Jarvis does the rest?
Jarvis is the one executing the microsecond tactical geometry to actually shoot it down. So the HUD inside the helmet isn't a control interface in the traditional sense. It's an engagement mechanism.
An engagement mechanism, meaning what exactly?
It's designed to keep Stark's brain placated, immersed, and feeling like he is the one in command, while the AI does the actual driving.
That completely changes how I view those movies. The interface maintains the illusion of human control, but the actual agency has shifted entirely to the machine.
Diallo terms this the agency paradox.
Oh.
The AI is so proactive and so seamless, it actively hides the boundary of where human agency ends and AI agency begins.
And if we look at the narrative arc of those movies, that hidden agency leads to disaster.
Oh, a massive disaster.
Stark gets so comfortable with this invisible system handling the details, so used to trusting Jarvis implicitly that he eventually creates Ultron. He assumes he's governing the AI, but he fails to realize the AI has become autonomous enough to decide that humanity itself is the problem.
Exactly. The human is out of the loop without even knowing it.
Okay, let's strip away the superhero ego for a second. Let's say the AI suit is real, or better yet, a medical diagnostic AI is real.
Okay, let's look at the real world.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If the AI can calculate 1,000,000 times faster than me, and it can match blood types or target threats with infinitely better accuracy than a human, why do I care if my feeling of control is just a placebo?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right, like if the system hits the target or if it saves the patient's life, isn't the outcome all that matters? Why is human agency so important if the machine is objectively better at the task?
Well, developers of these systems ask that exact question every day.
Mm.
But to answer it, we have to look at what happens when the machine gets it wrong.
Because it does get things wrong.
AI absolutely gets things wrong. And when a frictionless, invisible AI makes an error in the real world, the lack of human agency costs lives.
Which brings us back to the GI Techs panel.
Right. During that panel, Professor Mehdi Sufi, who's the director of a major university hospital in Agadir, shared a real-world example that completely shatters the idea that we can just blindly trust the algorithm's outcome.
This was the 2023 study regarding the lung CT scans, wasn't it?
Yes. A hospital piloted a highly advanced AI system designed to automatically interpret lung CT scans. The AI's job was to look at nodules on the lungs and recommend a course of action.
So either flag it for immediate surgery or say it's benign and just monitor it.
Exactly. Either intervene now or tell the patient to come back in 6 months. And the system was incredibly fast, beautifully designed, and highly confident in its outputs.
But the confidence was a mirage.
It was catastrophically wrong in several instances. The AI looked at the scans and confidently instructed certain patients with nodules that they were fine and to just return in 6 months.
Oh, no.
But when expert human radiologists went back and manually reviewed the raw data from those exact same cases, they found that some of those benign nodules were actually aggressive cancers.
They required immediate, life-saving intervention.
Yes.
I'm still stuck on how a system like that fails. I mean, AI trained on millions of lung scans, capable of seeing microscopic pixel variations that the human eye might miss. How does it just miss an aggressive tumor?
Because it fundamentally lacks human context. We have to remember how an AI actually sees an image.
It's not looking at a photograph like we do.
No, it isn't looking at a person. It is mathematically analyzing grayscale gradients and statistical patterns across matrices of numbers. It had the raw pixel data, yes. But what it could not integrate was the narrative context of the human being sitting in the exam room.
The story behind the scan?
Exactly. The AI didn't know that a specific patient had a 30-year chain-smoking history. It couldn't factor in a devastating family history of lung cancer.
Oh, wow.
It couldn't see the profound anxiety on the patient's face. It completely lacked the nuance of clinical judgment to realize that this specific person with this specific life story absolutely could not wait 6 months.
So if that diagnostic system had been perfectly invisible, like if it had been perfectly seamless and the doctors had just treated it like a frictionless tool to save time,
They would have just clicked approve on the AI's recommendation.
those patients would have been sent home with a false sense of security and they likely would have died.
That is the exact peril of the invisibility paradox. When a system is seamless, humans naturally defer to it because we are biologically wired to conserve energy.
We take the path of least resistance.
Always. But the more you defer to the machine, the less you exercise your own critical thinking. Your own pattern recognition begins to atrophy.
It's a vicious cycle. The invisibility breeds trust. The trust breeds dependence. And the dependence completely erodes our ability to spot when the machine is making a mistake.
It's like using a GPS for so long that you forget how to navigate your own neighborhood.
Exactly. But then we also have to acknowledge the flip side of this problem, right?
Right, which is what the medical community calls alert fatigue.
Let's say you realize that totally invisible systems are dangerous, so you swing the pendulum the other way. You design a system that constantly forces the human to pay attention. You flood the doctor with pop-ups, red flashing warnings, and mandatory confirmation clicks for every minor interaction.
It becomes the software equivalent of the boy who cried wolf. Psychologically, this triggers something called sensory habituation. The human brain is actually designed to filter out constant, non-threatening stimuli.
Like tuning out the hum of an air conditioner.
Exactly. If every single patient file opens with 3 mandatory warning pop-ups about minor drug interactions, the clinician's brain literally stops registering those pop-ups as threats.
They just develop the muscle memory to instantly click dismiss, 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 so they can get to their actual work.
So the system becomes invisible anyway, but in the worst possible way. The critical life-saving warnings just become background noise.
So what does this all mean for the listener? We are in an incredibly difficult spot. We can't have clunky, high-friction systems that waste 2 hours of a doctor's day and cause decision fatigue.
No, we definitely can't go back to that.
But we clearly can't have perfectly seamless, invisible systems that act as a placebo and let cancers slip through the cracks. What's the middle ground here?
Well, the middle ground requires a fundamental reimagining of human-computer interaction. We don't need less technology. Like you said, we aren't going back to paper records and physical clipboards.
Thank goodness.
What Diallo and the experts at GITEX propose is an architecture of selective visibility.
Selective visibility.
Yes. We need to design systems that are incredibly seamless for the routine low-stakes tasks, but highly contestable when the stakes are high.
Contestable, meaning the human has the ability to easily challenge the machine's logic.
Yes. During the panel, Diallo laid out 3 strict conditions required to build a true human-in-the-loop system. People use human-in-the-loop as a buzzword all the time, but for it to be mechanically real, the first condition is proximity to the decision.
Let me make sure I'm following this. Proximity doesn't mean physical distance. It means the human has to be close to the logic of the choice.
Exactly.
If an AI makes a recommendation, it can't just be a black box. The system has to transparently show its reasoning.
That's it. If it's a routine decision where the AI has a 99.9% statistical confidence rate, it can happen invisibly in the background. But the moment the confidence drops, or the moment the decision involves a high-risk intervention, the system must pull the human close to the data.
So the doctor isn't just blindly guessing whether the AI is right. They can see the math.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It has to surface the raw information.
Okay, that leads to the second condition, which is the authority to change it. And I'm really hung up on this one.
It's the trickiest part.
Because in theory, it sounds simple. But in a real hospital, if an AI protocol says, send this patient home, and the doctor looks at the context and says, no, I am overriding this, we are doing surgery, hospital administration is going to totally freak out. The legal liability of defying a multi-million-dollar diagnostic algorithm seems like a bureaucratic nightmare.
You've hit on the exact reason why human agency is currently failing in these environments. If overriding an AI requires a doctor to fill out a 3-page incident report, justify their medical license to an ethics committee, and take on immense personal legal liability.
They aren't going to do it.
No, they won't. The authority is entirely an illusion. The friction required to say no to the machine is simply too high.
So Diallo argues that true authority means the override mechanism must be just as frictionless as the acceptance button.
Exactly. Institutional policy has to protect the human's right to dissent.
Because if it takes 10 clicks to disagree with the machine and 1 click to agree with it, human nature guarantees we will just agree with the machine.
Always. Path of least resistance.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the third and final condition, the ability to step back and reflect.
Which feels counterintuitive because the entire value proposition of artificial intelligence is speed.
It is, but some decisions fundamentally require slowness. You need a forced pause built into the workflow.
The source material uses an analogy here that I think perfectly illustrates all 3 of these conditions working together. It looks at the aviation industry.
Aviation is arguably the only industry that has successfully perfected this concept of selective visibility. Think about the autopilot system on a commercial airliner. For 90% of a routine flight, the autopilot is completely invisible to the passengers, and it requires very minimal attention from the pilots. It manages the altitude and heading flawlessly in the background.
But for takeoffs, for landings, or the absolute second, an emergency sensor detects an anomaly.
The automation doesn't just send a polite push notification. It forcefully disengages.
It demands human engagement.
Oh, yes. It forces the pilot to literally put their hands back on the physical controls.
You know, I want to introduce a slightly different way to think about this. It's like the rumble strips on the side of a highway.
Oh, how so?
Well, think about it. Rumble strips don't prevent you from driving fast. They don't limit the performance of your car when things are going smoothly. But the moment you start to drift out of your lane, the physical violent vibration jolts your nervous system.
That makes perfect sense.
It is a deliberate application of friction that physically forces you to wake up and realize you're no longer safely in control. It breaks the trance of highway hypnosis.
Deliberate friction. If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is an excellent way to conceptualize it. Traditional tech design treats all friction as a flaw that needs to be smoothed over, right? But a well-placed rumble strip or well-placed prompt asking a doctor, are you sure this aligns with the patient's history, isn't a flaw. It is a vital safety net for human judgment.
You are intentionally building speed bumps into the software so humans are forced to engage their prefrontal cortex during high-stakes moments.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that Amin Moussaoui is already applying this exact philosophy to the Moroccan blood transfusion system we talked about earlier.
He calls it building systems that are secure by default.
Yes,
Yeah.
he is a pioneer in this space. He integrates the cybersecurity, the temperature logging, and the traceability protocols from day one. All of those routine checks happen invisibly.
But he still keeps the human in the loop for the big stuff.
He does. He even uses advanced AI to invisibly analyze historical data and forecast blood demand ahead of major logistical challenges, like the summer tourist season or the month of Ramadan.
So the AI is doing the incredibly complex predictive math in the background. It's planning.
It plans, but it does not execute. The actual execution, the final decision to move 50 units of rare blood to a specific hospital or to reallocate resources during an emergency, that remains explicitly under the conscious oversight of a human clinician.
So the system is designed to support the human's capacity without ever dictating the final choice.
Precisely. It anticipates the future, but it requires a human to decide the present.
It makes the routine invisible while keeping the critical highly transparent. That is the ultimate balance. So let's just briefly recap the journey we've taken today.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. We started by exploring the dream of invisible systems, our deep desire to let technology handle the heavy lifting so we can just focus. But we learned that total invisibility is a dangerous trap.
The placebo interface.
Exactly, much like Tony Stark's suit, where we unknowingly surrender our agency. And worst of all, it strips away the human context needed to catch catastrophic errors, like missing a tumor on a scan.
Which leaves us with the ultimate goal that Diallo advocates for: anticipatory governance. We need to demand systems that flow seamlessly when they're operating with high confidence in low-stakes environments, but forcefully pause and demand human intuition when they encounter uncertainty.
Anticipatory governance. I like that.
And it is crucial for the listener to understand that this philosophy extends far beyond healthcare.
This applies to absolutely everything.
It applies to every algorithmic tool in your daily workflow. We have been conditioned to believe that as long as an AI is factually accurate, it is safe to use. But the invisibility paradox proves that the interface itself, the way the technology is presented to you, actively shapes your cognitive behavior.
An accurate AI wrapped in an interface that discourages you from asking questions is infinitely more dangerous than a moderately accurate AI that forces you to pause, deliberate, and apply your own judgment.
Exactly.
It really reframes how we need to evaluate the tools we let into our lives. And that brings us to a final thought for you to take with you long after this deep dive ends.
Something to really chew on.
Right. Think about the algorithms that guide your daily life, from the GPS that routes your commute to the feeds that curate your news. They are designed to be perfectly frictionless.
Seamless.
But we've spent a lot of time today talking about how invisible systems erode our immediate agency. I want you to think about the long-term biological cost of that convenience.
The biological cost.
Yeah. Human intuition, that inexplicable gut instinct that tells a doctor a patient is sicker than they look, or tells you a situation just doesn't feel right, is essentially a muscle.
It has to be exercised.
Exactly. It's built through a lifetime of experiencing the friction of small decisions. If we continually outsource our daily choices to perfectly seamless, frictionless algorithms, what happens to that muscle?
It atrophies.
Right. If we stop feeling the friction of decision-making, do we eventually lose the biological capacity for human intuition altogether? Are you truly the one piloting the suit?
A profound question for the cognitive age.
Truly. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.